Good afternoon. Welcome back again in the second session. In this session, we will be talking about classification, accuracy assessment, and change detection. So, we have tried to perform the classification. We have tried to understand what is the classification methods, but how well we have been able to do the classification, that to find out that we have to perform accuracy assessment of our classification. So now what is accuracy assessment? Accuracy assessment is a general term, and this term is used for comparing the classification output that you have achieved after supervised or unsupervised classification and comparing it with the correct information. And this correct information can be taken up from the ground observation. It can be taken from already existing map, or you can do the visual interpretation at certain locations and check whether find out what is the correct information. So accuracy assessment is a term to compare the classification to geographical data that is assumed to be true in order to determine the accuracy of classification process. Now, assumed true data, what we are saying that this is the true data, it is generally taken from ground truth data, or as I already explained, by visual interpretation also. Now, what is happening is we have classified the entire image, but we cannot check each and every pixel of this image with the ground information. So what we have to do is we have to do this checking at certain specific locations or certain specific sites. These sites are called as sample points, or are called as these are sample points. So now it is not practical to test individually each and every pixel of the classified image. A representative sample of reference points in the image with known class values is used. So what we have to do is, over the image we have to select certain sample points. How we will collect these sample points we will be discussing in this session. So at these sample points we should know what is the class in our classified image and what is the class in the reference image, or what is the class on the ground. So how to find out the class from the ground? So either you can take GPS, go to the ground and check the class, what class is there at a particular location, land use class. And or what you can do is, sitting in your lab, you can look at the image by visual interpretation at those locations. You can see what specific land use category this particular pixel belongs to. Now, from where are we getting the error in our classification? So there are lot many sources of error for our output that we have generated. Now these errors can be errors because of data acquisition. So you can have error in the sensor system, in the platform movement, in ground control, or any other such thing. You can have error during the pre-processing, the radiometric and geometric correction that you have performed prior to that. There are certain data conversion is also available. Suppose you are converting from raster to vector, you are converting from one data type to another data type. So in that also some error might creep in into your data set. In the information extraction process that we have discussed in the previous session, the classification system that we have done, in qualitative, quantitative analysis, in visual interpretation, generalization of the data, when we are marking the boundaries we try to make smooth boundaries, whereas in the classified image the boundaries are not very smooth. So there can be some error because of this generalization of boundaries also. The raster image, the satellite image is a raster image. Ultimately my map is should be in a vector form. So raster to vector conversion or vector to raster conversion also adds into the error in the final class. The accuracy assessment that we are going to do, error assessment, we are going to design the samples, we are going to take the number of samples per class. So all these might have certain errors, and this error can be in our data. So all these errors can ultimately affect the decision making that will be done based on the data set that we have, or information that we have generated. Now, the main objective is for certain specific pixels, for certain specific sites, for certain specific areas, we have to locate these ground reference text pixels. Now, ground reference test pixels, or what we can say is sample pixel, or what we can say is reference pixel in short. Okay, so now these pixels are not used in the training site. In training site also we are using certain pixel, but the pixels that we are using in training sites will not be used for testing how accurate is my classification. So testing data will be completely different from training data. Now, these sites are not used to train the classification algorithm, and therefore they represent unbiased reference information. It is possible to collect some ground reference test information prior to classification, perhaps at the time of training data. So, when you are going to the field to collect the training information, you can collect some reference pixels also at that time. Otherwise, later on also you can do it. Most often collected after the classification using a random sample to collect the appropriate number of unbiased observation per class. So this is this practice also can be followed, that when you are going to collect the training samples, you collect a few sample pixels, but generally after the classification is done, these sample pixels are collected in a random manner. Random means no fixed rule is there. Randomly it will be collecting throughout the image. Many number of samples are collected. Now this random sampling we are doing so that unbiased observation for per class is achieved. Okay, what are the best practices for reference for accuracy assessment? At least per class, suppose you have 5 classes, so for every class you should have some number of points. It should not happen that if there is a class which is very small in areal extent, so what happens, there is no sample pixel in that area. So what will happen, that you won't be able to get the clear picture about the accuracy of this class. Reference points should be derived from imagery or data acquired at or near the same time as classified image. So if you are going to field also, then for the date for which you are doing the classification, date of data, at the similar dates only you should go and collect the reference information also, because the features on the ground get changed. They are dynamic features. Suppose pre-monsoon and post-monsoon, many things get changed. Then pre-harvesting, post-harvesting, many things change on the ground, so reflectance values changes, and ultimately you might have problems. So if there is no other option available, so what we can do is use original image to visually evaluate the reference point. So if you cannot go to the ground, you can use the original image. On that original image, do visual image interpretation for individual areas, individual pixels, and assign the class label. Now, there are two things that we should be considering. What should be the size of the sample, and how the sample should be taken across the image. So, sample size and sample design. Size of sample. What should be, how many number of pixels should be there? So, there is a general rule. A formula, capital N is equal to Z square multiplied by P into Q divided by E square, where Z is the standard deviation. uh, Z you should take as 2. Don't go into the complications why we are taking 2. So Z is value 2. Capital E is how much error you are allowing. Okay, you cannot expect 100% result. Okay, suppose I am saying that around 95% accuracy is acceptable to me. So how much error is allowed? 5% of error is allowed. So 5% becomes my error. Okay, E. uh, P is expected percentage accuracy, and Q is 100 minus P. So how much percentage I am saying that it would say. So suppose, just to give an example, for a sample for which expected accuracy is 85% at an allowable error of 5%. That means 85% of accuracy at an error rate of 5%. Suppose this is what my specifications for project are. Then capital N comes out to be 203 points. Similarly, if the number of if the error is 10%, allowable error is 10%, then only 51 points are required for the area. Okay, so like this you can find out how many number of points are required. Then how we have to design, or how we have to take these points. So there are basically 5 sampling designs used to collect ground reference data for assessing the accuracy of remote sensing derived thematic map. So these are random sampling, as I have shown in the first image. Randomly all the points are collected. Then systematic sampling, that means at every fixed x and y you have collected the point. Then we can have stratified random sampling. Stratified random sampling means it is random in nature but stratified also. Stratified means that every class, every category, every land use class will have few number of points. Okay. Then we have systematic stratified unaligned sampling. So which is systematic also, that means it goes as per the x and y. Okay, at every fixed x and y the point has to be collected, but the point can be changed a little bit, so that the randomness is also so that the stratifiedness is also achieved. That means if you are seeing that there is a class, another class there, and the too many points are collected in class A, so it will change and get the point in another class. The other type is cluster sampling, in which the cluster of samples are taken. In general, the stratified random sampling is used for remote sensing data classification. So these are basically the sample designing techniques, but for remote sensing data classification accuracy assessment, stratified random sampling is used generally. Okay, commonly used methods of. Okay, so in a random sample, no rule is used. It is created using a completely random process. Stratified random is points are generated proportionate to distribution of class in the image. So if the area of class is more number of points would be there. If area of class is less number of points are will be there. There is equalized random also, in which it is random but equal number of random points are there in each class. So generally stratified random sampling is used for remote sensing classification accuracy assessment. Okay, so suppose with a stratified random sample, a minimum number of reference points in each class is usually specified. Suppose in our case it is 30. So what will happen? If 80% of area is forest, 10% of is urban, 10% is water, so 30% points will be divided into such type of classification. Means 80% points will go to forest points, 10% and 10% will go to water and urban. So 3 points for urban and water, whereas remaining 24 points will be for forest. Whereas in a completely random, because most of the area is forest, so most of the points are going to forest, very less number of points are, or maybe no point is going to urban or water. And if we are using equalized random, then 10 10 10 will be given to all 3 categories. Now once that is done, once you are collecting the sample points and over the image, and you have said that for each sample point what is the category, or in the what is the land use class of the classified image, and what is the reference land use class. Now if you have this kind of table ready with you, because this is beforehand that you have to do. So if this type of table is ready with you, so this table can be realigned or reformulated in form of a matrix which we call as confusion matrix. Now what is a confusion matrix? Confusion matrix is a square matrix in which on one side we are putting the thematic map classes, and on one side we are putting ground truth classes. So for every point we have a thematic map class, that means what is the class in the classified image, and what is the class on the ground, or what is the reference class. Okay, now I'm giving an example to explain it so that it becomes clear to you. Now suppose in my classified image I have selected 136 random points. Okay, and this 136 random points are in my class we have category A, category B, category C. That means class A, B, C. It can be forest, water, urban. It can be any three classes. So we have three classes in my classified image. Okay. Now suppose 35 pixels, 35 sample points, or 35 classes, 35 out of 136 total number of class, total number of sample points, 50 sample points are there in category A that I have collected from the ground. Okay, now these 50 points, out of these 50 points, 35 are also correctly classified as category A in my classified output. So 35 number we have to put here, which were class A and which are classified also as class A. So 35 is the correctly classified category. So correctly classified samples. So I have put 35 here. I will again try to explain. So number of points that we have taken is 136. Out of 136, 35 points or 35 sample points, they are in actual, for them, for these 35 points, the thematic map as well as ground truth both are category A. So I have put 35 here. Okay. There are other points also, few points which are A in the reference class, but they are not classified as A. That means they were forest, but they are classified as urban. This also is possible. So what is happening? Suppose there are 10 such points, so I have put 10 here. Okay. There are 5 points which were forest in the reference, but they have been classified as water. So I have put 5 here. So this 35, 10 and 5 I have put like this. I will again try to explain. 35 number of points were classified as category A, that is forest, and on the ground reference again they were forest only. So they were correctly classified. Okay, they were forest and they were classified as forest. So they were 35 pixels have been put here. Okay, 10 pixels were in actual, in reality they were forest, that means they were class A, but they were classified as another class, that is B. So that comes out to be 10. I have put 10 here. Okay, like this, the pixels which were in reality class A but were classified as C, they have been put like this. Okay, so like this, all the number of pixels are, or all the number of sample points are realigned, reclassified, distributed in form of error matrix. So this error matrix is a square matrix in which the number of rows and number of columns are same, and this number of rows and columns is equal to the number of categories or number of classes that you have classified. Okay, so once this is done, we can we can do all sorts of calculations over this. Okay, now if you look here, all the classified pixels, correctly classified pixels, are falling in the diagonal of the matrix. So you can see 35 pixels were correctly classified here. BB, that means 37 pixels were correctly classified here. CC, that means 41 pixels were correctly classified here. So total number of correctly classified pixels is 35 plus 37 plus 41. Okay. And how many are the total number of pixels? 136. So total correctly classified divided by total number of pixels gives me overall accuracy of the classification. Okay. So this is overall accuracy of the classification, but that comes out to be 83%. But just because 83% overall classification is there, accuracy is there, it doesn't mean that all three categories were classified with this accuracy. Okay, so there are different other measures of accuracy also. These are users accuracy and producers accuracy. Now, who is the user of map? User of the map would be one who will use this thematic map. He has not created the map. Okay, he only knows what classes have been classified. Pixel is classified into which class. So he is interested in only thematic map classes. So thematic map classes are there in the rows. Okay, so now he knows that you have classified 39 pixels as category A, where out of those 39 pixels, 35 pixels are correct. So out of 39, 35 are correct. So accuracy of, or users accuracy of class A is 35 upon 39, that is 90%. Similarly, for class B, it is 37 upon 50. For class C, it is 41 upon 47. This is users accuracy. Okay. But there is other person also who has done this classification. He has this ground truth classes along with him also, and he wants to know that in reality 50 pixels, 50 sample points were there which should have been classified as A, out of which only 35 got classified as A. So 35 divided by 50 becomes producer's accuracy for class A. Okay, so like this you can calculate users accuracy, producers accuracy, and overall accuracy for different categories. There is another method of accuracy assessment, that is kappa coefficient. You must all have heard about this kappa coefficient. Kappa coefficient expresses the proportionate reduction in error generated by classification in comparison with a completely random process. Kappa analysis yields a kappa statistics, which is estimate of kappa. It is measure of agreement or accuracy between remote sensing derived classification map and the reference data, and the formula for kappa is this. Okay, I will give an example so that you can understand what is the formula. Now, the same, now this is another confusion matrix in which there were total 4 classes: forest, shrubland, grassland, and urban. So the classified output and reference data is given here. Now here you see the rows and columns are different. Here reference data is there in rows and classified thematic class is there in the column. Anyhow, now here what is there is 500 is the total number of sample points that we have taken. Okay, then then we have this 360. 360 comes out to be this. Just one second. Number of observations in row and column, total number of observation. Okay, total number of observation. How many are there? Minus 180 into 200. That means row total multiplied by column total. Row total multiplied by column total. Row total multiplied by column total, and so on, divided by 500 is the total number. Square of 500 minus the same thing, row total multiplied by column total, and so on. Okay, so this gives me the kappa coefficients. This is, as you can see here, this is summation of m multiplied. M is total number of observation in the matrix, which was 500, where and this 360 was row I is equal to j is equal to 1 up to r. That means row from one row to last row, from one column to last row column, how many are the total number of observation. Total of that becomes the row total number of observations in row and column. Okay, for all the rows and for all the column. Okay, so that comes out to be kappa coefficient. So the same thing is given here also. N into a minus b upon n square minus b, where n is the total number of columns. That is, for the same example, 136. A is sum of diagonals, that is this 35 plus 37 plus 41, and b is row total multiplied by column total. Okay, so this was regarding the accuracy assessment. Now coming to change detection. Now for many applications, we require how much change has happened from one time duration to another time duration. So that process is called as change detection. So there are various methods of change detection. Change detection means the process of identifying differences in the state of an object or phenomena by observing it at different times. That means how the features are at one point of time and how they have changed at another point of time. So from one time to another, how much change has happened. It is usually applied to Earth's surface changes at two or more times. So two or more number of data set of or what we can call it as multi-temporal data set is being used. So land use, land cover change is a major component of global change with an impact perhaps greater than that of climate change. When we find out how much is the land use land cover change, it provides a foundation for better understanding relationship and interaction between human and natural phenomena. It involves the application of multi-temporal data set for quantitative analysis of temporal effect of phenomena. So we all know that, okay, the forest is depleting, the urban area is increasing, but how much forest has changed to urban area, and what all changes have happened quantitatively, that comes in change detection. Change detection can be used for land use land cover changes, forest or vegetation change, forest mortality, defoliation, damage assessment. So there are various fields or various application areas in which the change detection can be used. Now, what should be the considerations when you are implementing the change detection? As I have already said that we have to use multi-temporal images. Multi-temporal means images taken at different time period. Now, multi-temporal images, these images should be precisely co-registered with each other. It should not happen that your images are not perfectly co-registered. So when any algorithm is applied, so x coordinate is sitting over y coordinate in the second image, so everything will go wrong. So all the images that you are going to use for change detection should be perfectly co-registered with each other. The pixels should exactly sit on top of each other. Secondly, the atmospheric conditions should be nearly same. Precise radiometric and atmospheric calibration or normalization should be done. It should not happen that one image is having very fine radiometry, is not having haze. In the second image, you are having atmospheric haze, clouds, and so on. So the image should be radiometrically and atmospherically normalized so that they can be used. Because what we are doing is, directly in some methods, we are comparing the brightness value of first image with the second image, and as you know, the brightness value changes because of haze, because of atmospheric effect. So changes because of atmosphere, but we are recording that this changes because of land use change. So that type of errors should not be there. So to avoid such things, the radiometrically and atmospheric calibration should be performed on the images. Then you should not think that worldview image can be compared with Landsat image. Okay, the spatial and spectral resolution should be similar, if not same. Okay, similar means within the same range. Okay, you cannot compare multispectral with hyperspectral image. So digital change detection is affected by spatial, spectral, radiometric, and temporal constraints. So while you are selecting the images which will be used for digital change detection, you should be very you should take all these considerations into account before selecting the images which can be used. Basically, there are various change detection methods. So if we classify them into categories, broadly there are around 7 categories in which change detection methods can be classified. So one by one, the first one is algebra based approach. Algebra based approach means directly algebra, we are using the brightness value. Okay, either pixel to pixel brightness value, or band to band, we are doing band ratio and then calculating the changes. So somehow one image and another image, we are trying to compare it, okay, based on brightness values. Now this brightness value can be directly dn comparison, it can be based on image regression, it can be based on image ratios also. You calculate band ratio of pre-event image and band ratio of post-event image and then do it. Similarly, vegetation indices are also a band ratio only, so you can calculate ndvi for first date image, ndvi for second date image, and that also comes under algebra based approaches. Then another is change vector analysis also. We will be doing I'll be explaining a few of these algorithms. Another one that many of you must have done is classification based approach. Most commonly used is post classification comparison. That means you classify the first date image, classify the second date image into same number of classes, and then find out what is the change. In classification based approaches, you can also have spectral temporal combined analysis. That means how the spectral values are changing in time domain, so that also can be used. You can have unsupervised change detection methods, hybrid change detection methods. We can also perform change detection using artificial neural network also. uh, Minakshi madam must have taught you about transformations, image transformation, PCA, principal component analysis, Tasselt cap, KT transformation, Graham Smith transformation. So these are transformation in which the image is transformed into another type of in another set of data. Okay, so these transformation also can be used for change detection. There are certain advanced methods also, which use spectral mixture model or biophysical parameter method. So there are various methods also. We can also use GIS based method. So some GIS analysis also can be used, in which some information from other sources also can be put. Sixth, and the most basic, is visual interpretation. Just look at one image and the second image and see what are the changes. There are other change detection methods also based on other image processing methods, such as measure of spatial dependence, knowledge based vision system, area production method. But these are all very advanced methods. We should not go into details of these methods. But a few methods, just to have a basic understanding how the change detection, digital change detection happens. One by one, we will be looking at a few methods. So we will start with the algebra based approaches. These are most common, and the second common thing are post classification approaches. So we will be dealing these. So algebra based category, they include image differencing, image regression, band ratioing, vegetation difference indexing, and so on. These methods are very simple, straightforward, and they are easy to understand also. And they can, but they cannot provide matrix of change information. Now, what do we mean by matrix of change? Matrix of change means, we have, after change detection, we said that 10% of forest area has changed into what? Whether this 10%, how much of this forest area has gone into urban, how much has gone into barren land. So this is what is we call as matrix. That means from one, we don't know where this area is going. We know that, okay, earlier forest was 80%, now forest is 70%. So a common person can say that yes, 10% area has changed. But how, where has it gone? Okay, exactly forest pixels, where, in which category it has gone. So these algebra based methods, they are not capable of predicting that. They can't tell me that in which category my forest pixel has gone. So in algebra based approaches, two aspects are critical for change detection: selecting suitable image bands and suitable threshold. So suitable band, we know that in our multispectral image we have multiple bands. We can create different ratio images also. Different type of ratios are available. Which particular ratio image or which particular band should I use for differencing? I cannot use everything. It has to be done on band to band basis. Okay, so only one band can be used at one time. Secondly, what should be the threshold? Because category, same pixel, if I am capturing the data after suppose 10 years, even if the forest is same, the pixel value will not be same. There would be change in pixel value. It will be in similar range but not same. So we have to accordingly select these threshold values. Okay, up to this threshold there is no change. Beyond this threshold, the change is happening. So that suitable threshold is very, very important. So these are two basic considerations. Now starting with image differencing, it is as simple as taking first image, second image, creating simple minus of first band data of first image and second image, and you will get the change map. Okay, if the difference is less, below a certain threshold, that we have to very critically identify or very critically select. Less than a certain threshold, we will say that there is no change. More than a certain threshold, there is change. But what is the change? We don't know. Okay, so image differencing is subtract the first date image from a second date image, pixel by pixel. Suppose in first image the pixel value is 40, in second image pixel value is 70. So 70 minus 40 or 40 minus 70, so difference is 30. If it is more than my threshold, so we will say that this pixel has changed from first date to second date. This method is as simple as this. So the advantage is that it is very simple, straightforward, easy to interpret. Then it is very efficient way to detect change. Now, in case of disasters where we don't have time to do the classification, post data classification, pre data classification, we don't have time, because the disaster response time is very, very critical. You have to find out where is the change area, where is the problem area, and you have to give the information immediately so that the people can act accordingly. Lot of lives can be saved. So in such type of cases, we don't have too much time for processing. So in such type of cases, this can be an effective technique. Okay, it cannot provide a detailed change matrix. As I have already discussed, change matrix is not available. It only will tell that there is a change. It requires careful definition of change, no change threshold. So that is the most critical thing. What should be the threshold value beyond which we will say there is a change, and below which there is no change? It requires acquisition of comparable imagery and careful radiometric correction. So the images should be similar. The atmospheric, radiometric calibration should be there between the images. So this is an example to show how image differencing works. Suppose this is a 4 by 4 band, 4 rows and 4 pixel area that we have taken. These are the pixel values. So you can see simple differencing it has done. 8 minus 5, so 3. 10 minus 9, 1. 8 minus 7, 1. 11 minus 10, 1. So like this, it has found out where are the less change areas and where are the more change areas. Okay, so then if our threshold is around 100, let us say, okay, so all this 143, 107, 110, 117, 166, 168 and 164, all these will be marked as changed, whereas pixels in which value is 0, 1, 2, 3 will be marked as no change areas. Okay. The next method is image regression. Many of you must be knowing the regression. So in image regression, what it is doing is it establishes a relationship between bitemporal image, then estimates pixel value of second date image by use of regression function, subtract the regressed image from the first date image. Now what it does, it doesn't take a simple image to image subtraction. Instead what it does, it takes first image, second image. Okay, based on certain sample pixels, it will find out the relationship between first image, first date image and second date image. Okay, how the relationship is happening, how much pixels are changing. Okay, now what is happening is the regression line or equation is created, equation of relationship between first and second image is created. So based on that equation, it will find out pixel value of each pixel in the second image. Then this image and the original second image, it will subtract and find out where are the changes. Okay, so it reduces this all is done to reduce the atmospheric effect and sensor and environmental differences between the two images. Okay, I have listed out the work which was done using such techniques. So as you can see, in 1994, Jha and Unni published one paper on forest conversion. Singh in 1986 published a paper on tropical forest change using image regression. So if you want to find out more about this, you can look into these manuscript, these papers, to check more about this particular technique. Now, next is image ratios. As you must have been told in your image enhancement classes, that image ratio is a method by which the effect of sun angle, shadow, topography, this can be reduced. So, to reduce this effect, we can calculate image ratio of first image and same image ratio of second image. Suppose IR divided by R. Okay, we calculate for pre-date image, IR divided by R, we calculate for post-date image. Then we do image differencing of these two ratio images. So it calculates the ratio of registered images of two dates band by band. And the advantage of this technique is it reduces the impact of sun angle, shadow, topography. And the disadvantage is that no non-normal distribution of result is always criticized. So because ratios, they will generally highlight some areas, and because we are using only two bands, so it may have effect on other areas. So as you can see, in 1998, Prakash and Gupta, they published a paper on land use mapping and change detection using image ratioing. Okay. Similarly, you can have vegetation index differencing, uh, in which it is similar to band ratios. Here you are calculating NDVI, vegetation index, separately from for first date image and second date image. You can do the differencing between these images. So it emphasizes differences in a spectral response of different features and reduces impact of topographic effect and illumination. So this is generally suitable for vegetation indexes. Then another method is algebra based method is background subtraction. In background subtraction, non-change areas, they have slowly varying background gray levels. So what happens, a low pass filtered variant of original image is used to approximate the variation to the ground image. So new image is produced through subtracting the background image from the original image. So background information is removed. Background, what would be the background which is not changing? Okay, so that is not changing, that means it is no change area. So no change area is taken out from the original image, and it highlights what are the change areas. Okay, but sometimes its accuracy is quite low, and development of background image or calculation of background image takes time, and it is the most important thing. The next is change vector analysis. Out of the algebra based methods, this is the only method, change vector analysis, which generates the change matrix also. It tells us, it calculates two outputs. One is magnitude of change, that means how much change has happened from one category to another category, from one date to another date. And it also tells us this the total change magnitude per pixel is calculated by is computed by determining the Euclidean distance between endpoints. Okay, so these two are calculated. But the disadvantage is that it is very difficult to identify land cover change trajectories, means exactly where this particular pixel is going. It is telling us that okay, this much is the magnitude, but how much it is changing, where it is changing, that we don't know. But any number of spectral bands can be used. Okay. The second type of category is transformation by using transformation matrices, that is PCA, Tasselt cap, Gram-Smith, chi-square. So in PCA, first of all, the PCA is calculated for both the images. So you can calculate PCA, use PCA for change detection by either putting two or more date of image into single file and then perform PCA. So what you can do is take first date image, second date image, put all the bands in one file and calculate the PCA. Or what you can do is calculate PCA of the first date image, second date image, and subtract it. So any method can be done. So you can see that the advantage of PCA method is that it reduces redundancy between the bands. PCA is scene dependent. So a change detection result between different dates are often difficult to interpret and label. So it cannot provide a complete matrix of change detection. So the key factor is how the analyst is identifying what change is happening. Another method is tassel cap. So this also was dealt in the enhancement lectures. So the KT transform also can be used for change detection. So in KT transformation, change detection is implemented based on, as you must be remembering that in KT transformation, four components in totality are calculated. One is brightness, greenness, wetness, and no such index. So out of that, brightness, greenness, and wetness can be used for change detection. Okay. So it is similar to principal component analysis. The next method, that is Gram-Smith method, this is also orthogonal spectral vectors are taken in Gram-Smith for from bitemporal, that means multitemporal images, as the original KT methods is using. Okay. Okay, chi-square you can leave. The next category of change detection is classification based approach. So most important in this category is post classification comparison. So what is happening is, using the date one, using two sets of images, you classify both the sets of images so that you have thematic map from date 1 and thematic map for date 2. Then you compare these thematic map of date 1 and date 2 to see how much is the change that is happened. The basic advantage of this category of this technique is that it avoids need for strict radiometric calibration, because we are not directly using the pixel values. We are converting those pixel values into thematic maps using the classification algorithm. Okay. And disadvantage is that, first of all, we have done data classification, so some error has gone in, has creeped in because of data classification, and then we are doing change detection, so some error has come in change detection, so cumulative error becomes more. So this is how classification of date 1, classification of date 2. Okay, two dates are classified separately, and classification map of date 2 is then subtracted from classified map of date 1. Okay, simple as that. So this the advantage is that we can have the matrix that from where, that means earlier this pixel was forest, now it is urban area. So forest to urban, these many number of pixel is I have changed. So we can have matrix of classification also, and we can create a base map. From that base map here, one by one you can do the classification, the changes. The disadvantage is that the accuracy of change map depends on accuracy of individual classification, and it requires two classifications, one for pre-date image and one for post-date image. You can do it using unsupervised classification technique also. We can produce a change detection map in which changed areas are separated from unchanged areas. The changes sought are assumed to result in large changes in radiance values than other factors. So this results in a difference image which is analyzed to separate insignificant from significant image. So similarly, this is supervised techniques in which, using supervised classification methods, the change detection is change detection is done. So it can be post classification or multi-date direct classification. So post classification, I have already told you. Multi-date direct classification is that instead of classifying everything separately, we have stacked everything into one single image, and that image we will classify into uh, into the new class. So the category would come into the classification is carried out on that. Okay, so two dates are combined into one multi-temporal image and then they are classified. So it performs joint classification of two images by using a stacked feature vector. Change detection is performed by considering each transition as a class and training the classifier to recognize all classes and all transitions. So drawback is that ground truth required is required for all the transitions. Okay, so this is a table which tells us how the supervised and unsupervised change detection can be are different. So you can read this yourself. So there are other approaches, advanced approaches for change detection, which are MRF based approaches and so on. Okay, Markov chain and cellular automata